hearing this and the audio is jacked, I apologize. I'm listening to the book of Joshua, and I'm reflecting on a few conversations that I've had with some friends of mine who are Jewish men. And one piece that I'm trying to understand is the sort of Passover, from Moses to Joshua. Okay, so like this idea of Joshua leads his people, leads the people of Israel into the promised land. Moses does not. And yet in the tradition, I think, and I don't want to misrepresent anybody from the Jewish faith, is that Moses is greater than Joshua. So I'm processing that. There's something that makes Joshua a greater Moses, in that Moses was not allowed to go into the promised land. And I apologize, I'm going to be trying to drive responsibly here. I just noticed that as I went live, I also started speeding. So, all right, focusing on multiple things as I take my hands off the wheel. So is Moses, I think in some ways Moses is greater than Joshua. He is the lawgiver, but one of the things that I was trying to sort through is Joshua is able to do something that Moses, the lawgiver, could not do, which is lead the people into the promised land. Of course, as a Christian person, I'm thinking through this as Jesus, as the greater Joshua, the one who actually leads people into the promise, into the fulfillment of the promise that God originally made with Abraham. So the law, then, it's almost like the law and the promise. The law and the promise. Okay, I won't respond, but if you let me know if the audio is jacked up, let me know, because I don't know if this is the first time I've ever tried to just sort of spitball and go live from my phone in my car. I don't like. Thanks, guys. I'm glad you're here. Yeah. So if the audio is jacked up, let me know. Maybe in all caps so I can see it better. So the relationship between Moses and Joshua becomes an illustration of the relationship of the law and the promise. The law cannot bring you into a place of fulfillment of the promise. Okay, how does that? But as a Christian person, I'm also not saying that the law has no place. Like it's there, and I think Paul later on even says the law is a tutor. The law is that sort of guide. But its goal is to lead you to fulfillment of the promise, and in sort of like a backhanded way of like showing you that you're not perfect and you need Jesus and all that. Okay, so Moses, Joshua, law, promise. If you go back to the garden, prior to sin entering humanity and messing up the relationship between God and humanity, there is a law. So you're in the garden, you're in the place of fulfillment or whatever of God's design for his relationship with humanity. You're in the garden, and yet in the garden there's a law. The law is you cannot eat of the fruit that's in the middle of the garden. And so that becomes sort of this image of how the law is nested in the promise. The promise is greater, but the law is still sort of nested in there, bringing about harmony, somehow assisting with that sort of harmonious relationship that humanity is meant to have with God. And so I wonder if and it's like, hey, I'm doing all this and realizing that this isn't sort of like profound, but the way I got there was interesting, so I thought I'd share it. Is that the mistake, and I think what Jesus was coming up against when he confronted the religious leaders was that they were making the law greater than the promise. That the law is supposed to be nested inside the covenant, inside the promise that God made with Israel. But it is not supposed to be the thing that the thing that governs God's relationship to his people is his promise, his covenant. If you think back to when, and again, this is where I would just put it out there to like Joseph and Hezi and Jacob and the rest of the guys in the corner of like, I need to understand this. When Abraham enters into the covenant with God, he never passes through the blood of the covenant. So that, right, he sets up, this is like Genesis 12, sorry, I'm sort of spitballing. It goes through the blood of the covenant. Abraham never does. And so God is taking on the covenant. It's not our responsibility. And so when we do that, when we take it on and we sort of create, I don't know, like, I guess I can't really ask for feedback because then I'm not driving responsibly. I need to, you know, am I crazy, or is there something to the fact that the law is meant to be present within the covenantal relationship of his people, between God and his people, but the law is never meant to be greater than the covenant. We see that in the garden. God creates the garden, and then there's a rule, there's a law that's sort of in the middle of it. It's nested in there. And then as we go back to Moses and Joshua, Moses is the sort of gives the law, right? God gives the law to Moses, Moses gives it to the people, but Moses is prevented from going into the promised land as a further illustration that the law is not meant to be the thing that fulfills the promise. God is the one who fulfills the promise. And so what's interesting in this, you know, Joshua, there's passages in Joshua that say, it doesn't say that God is going to speak to Joshua the way he spoke to Moses. And I'm sorry, I'm going to go through a kind of a dead spot here, I think. Doesn't say that God is going to speak to Joshua the way he spoke to Moses, but it does say, I will be with you just as I was with my servant Moses. So in a way, it like so there's parts of at least right there at the beginning of the book of Joshua where it really does sound like, if nothing else, like Moses and Joshua are equal. Maybe not in that sort of like prophetic sense of like God is speaking to Moses, Moses is speaking to the people. But God does say, I will be with you just as I was with my servant Moses. So be strong and courageous. Like that's what he says. And so the idea that Moses was greater than Joshua is, I'm struggling with that. I'm struggling with that. Because Moses doesn't bring his people into the promised land. And because the book of Joshua says, I will be with you just as I was with my servant Moses. And that, again, becomes this illustration of how the law and the promise are meant to be, the law is meant to be subject to the promise, right? The law, we make a mistake when we invert that, and the law becomes greater than the promise. That was my thought. And the law is weakened by the flesh, yeah. So I guess maybe audio is doing okay. Okay, hold on. I got a spot here. I'm actually working today. I'm actually on my way to do like a service project with a bunch of students, but I've got like, I'm out like 3 minutes ahead of schedule. So I'm literally gonna pull over for a second. I'm gonna read chat. And then I'll have to dip, but let me see if I can get to a decent spot. No, yes, I'm not. Hopefully that didn't come through. You don't need to work. Okay, Origin talks about this. Sherry, I'll have to check. Hey, Sherry, welcome in. I'm sure you've been around in my live streams before, but God doesn't require the sacrifice. Yeah, God doesn't require the sacrifice because he's going to be the sacrifice. Now, think about this. So Okay, so this is Abraham and Isaac, right? God says, okay, go sacrifice your son, right? He tells him to go sacrifice his son. And then what does he say? When Isaac says, where's the lamb for the sacrifice? Abraham says, God will provide for himself the sacrifice. And what God provides is not a lamb, but a ram that's got his horns caught in the thicket, right? And so the lamb is being, the lamb has yet to come. That's the idea between Abraham and Isaac. That's the story of Abraham and Isaac. God will provide the lamb eventually, but he's not providing it right then. If you swipe up, you can float through other live streams. Sweet. Yeah, this is a total experiment. I was going to try to do this on like member only mode because I just wasn't sure what I was doing. And I feel like the members would be a little bit more gracious than just the whole internet. But I'm glad you guys are here. You guys are the best part of the internet. Okay, cool. The YouTube live stream format is so strange. Okay, good. I'm getting these messages held for review and I'm not seeing them. Yeah, maybe I will have that. Anyway, Anita, I'm not sure. Maybe. All right. God commands the sacrifice. God commands the sacrifice, knowing that he will not demand it of people, but he will fulfill the sacrifice. Cool. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys listening to me kind of get that thought out of my head. And I usually drive my truck, and my truck is not a place where we could do this. I have no exhaust pipe on my truck. It's very loud. And so I don't, but if my other car, this is my wife's car, if that works, then maybe I'll do this more often. So thank you guys for being here, and I will, gosh, I've got something coming out Monday, and then I'm planning on Tuesday or Wednesday as another live stream. So I'll catch you guys, do a live stream tonight, and we can brainstorm together. Gosh, I've got friends coming over for dinner tonight. But we'll see. I have to do more in the evenings as far as podcasting and stuff like that is concerned. That's the nature of my life moving forward. So we'll see. I'm trying to make it to the end of the day with enough energy where I could feel like I could do a live stream more regularly. So Sherry, I will think about that. Yeah. Bummer you have a life. I love it. Thank you. And in fact, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, cool stuff happening. Maybe I'll share more, but for now I gotta go. It's cool. We're working in a food pantry today. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Are you sure you want to stop the live stream? I guess so.